Just like with many other weapons, I always wanted to use the Helphen Steeple. Steeple? This bad boy that I have right here. But I never used it, because it really was not that good. Well, the thing that makes this weapon so special, it's basically this thing that we have right here. It makes the thing look so amazing. Really so amazing. It's, you know, I'm a sucker for buffs in weapons. I just love to have buffs on weapons. I love to have those shining, glowing swords. Some people don't like it. I do. So that is why I always buff my weapons whenever I get the chance. That is why in many of my builds I always focus myself on using spells that buff your weapon, because prior to patch 107 the buffs that you would natively place in the weapons weren't really that good. Now with patch 107 these things are so amazing, so good, and I would even say that in some instances these are way better than regularly using spells on your weapon, using buffs on your weapons. That being said, let's talk about why this thing is so amazing. First and foremost, the poise damage. Before the patch, once you buff up the weapon, it would give you an extra 50 points into poise damage. Now, after the after the patch, that was increased all the way to 150. So the poise damage that you are going to be dealing with this thing is insane. The amount of stagger that you will deal to enemies with this thing is insane. Basically, if you use this, also there's extra poise damage if you two-hand a weapon. But also, as you can see in the screen right now, the banished knights from this place are basically some of the highest resistant enemies. They would take just way too much. They also use hyper armor on their attacks, and you're able to basically cancel all of their actions by power stancing this thing, because with that poise extra increase that you have on the weapon, you have that 110 extra poise into damage. But if you dual wield the weapon, if you power stance, that's 220 poise damage that you are dealing to the enemy, which is crazy, dude. It's amazing. Now, one thing of the weapon that is also cool as well is that it got a basic increase in AR, the buff on itself. So the AR damage for the buff weapon, it's higher now. It deals much more damage than it used to. One thing that I didn't like this thing, because in the past, before, is that it would only last for like 30 seconds. I believe that was the number. Now it's a whole minute. A complete minute for buffing. Your weapon is going to last you for a weapon. That makes viable for you to be able to dual wield and power stance this weapon. Remember, all you have to do is hold your weapon that you had in your left hand, switch weapons again, and then use the buff again, and there we go. We have 220 poise damage right here. It's just something beautiful, something out of this world. But also, as you can see right here, take a look at how fast this thing goes. If you're in a boss fight situation and you need to buff, it's really so damn fast, dude. And that is something that they did to the weapon as well. The speed of the animation was increased, but also the speed for the time frames that you use to be able to dodge, to attack, to make actions, to perform actions was increased as well. So just to recap, increased poise damage, increased attack power, increased buff duration, increased speed on the casting of the buff, and increased speed on the time frames that you have for you to be able to do some more actions. Just the design of the weapon, dude. Even when it's not buffed, I do believe that this is one of the coolest weapon designs that you have on the entire game. It really looks like a kind of a rock, but it's also so ominous and dark, and it's just amazing. So, that being said, let's talk about a possible build that you can make with this thing. Your main objective with a build like this is going to be 80 intelligence, because this weapon does have a B scaling on intelligence when you max it out, which is amazing. You're going to get a huge extra damage by doing so. Disclaimer. Now this build, I am not focusing on casting. This is build, I also forgot to mention that the weapon causes frostbite build up as well. But I did forget to mention that this is not a caster build, alright? We're using intelligence not to cast spells. We're using intelligence to scale the damage of the weapon on itself. We want to have as much damage as we can with this weapon, especially since we are going to dual wield the damn thing. And that being said, ideally you would want to have at least 40 points into bigger. Now, I am going to say that mind, it really is not that important for this build, because again, this is not a caster build, and since this is not a caster build, you really do not want to have that much mind. I would rather argue and say that you should focus placing all of those points as much as you can into intelligence and bigger. That is what you need to focus on. Once you achieve those max thresholds, then yes, you have a room to breathe and to actually start allocating some points into endurance, into mind as well. So all of the other points that we have in this build, it's just to be able to wear the weapon, but our focus in here is intelligence, not to cast spells. Now, if you are indeed going to cast spells, I would advise frozen spells. Spells that help you build that frost build up, because when you frostbite an enemy is going to take 20% extra damage, and when enemy takes a 20% extra damage, that is amazing, because the extra attack power that you got from the buff for this weapon, it's just going to be amazing. Now let's talk some of the talismans that you can use with this weapon. In here, I would say that the most important talismans, you have room to breathe as much as you can. There really are some talismans in here, but the ones that I would advise the best is the Claw Talisman. The Claw Talisman that enhances your jumping attacks. Remember, we're going to be dual wielding this thing. You do have to go to New Game Plus if you want a second copy of the weapon, but if you don't, a friend of yours could easily drop you the weapon, and there's no problem with that. And then we have the Green Turtle Talisman. Like always, this kind of builds always waste too much. I wouldn't say waste, but they always use way too much stamina. I always like to have the Earth Tree's Favor +2, because it really is a talisman that you cannot lose anything by using it. It's just going to give you extra endurance, extra health, extra weight power. So yeah, there's that. The Great Jaws Arsenal I also would advise, because this thing is rather heavy, and if you're going to be dual wielding that thing and you're going to have a low stamina, yeah, you're going to have the Great Jaw Talisman. You could swap this one or this one for the Magic Scorpion Charm. I do not have the Magic Scorpion Charm with me, because it really is a pain in the ass to get that charm. You do have to go meet Celuvius. Ew. You have to go to that dude. You have to interact with Celuvius. Ew. Anyways, you do have to go to that guy and do some quests for him. You have to do a little thingies right here, around here and there. We're not using the Shadow of Alexander, because at the end of the day, this thing, it is a downside. It doesn't hit anything. It just buffs the weapon. There are many weapons out there that are going to do a special attack. That special attack causes damage, and then you're going to get your buff weapon as well. This is not the case. This is not going to buff anything. Well, this is not going to give you any kind of attack or any kind of damage on the enemy. It's just going to buff the weapon. But I do believe that is the case, because again, the focus here is for you to be able to buff the weapon ASAP. The Flask of Wondrous Physiques that we are going to be using are, like always, Magic Shrouding Crack Tia to increase the damage, and Green Burst Crystal Tia to increase our stamina. So basically, again, what you want to do with this thing, buff your weapon on the left hand, switch to your right hand, jump, attack enemies with your Claw Talisman, and have fun. The damage potential that you will have with this thing, it's just crazy. But that is not only it. The stagger potential that you have with this thing, it's just amazing. You're basically going to be fighting against enemies, and enemies are not going to be able to deal damage to you because you're staggering way too much. This also works with bosses. You do know that you can stagger bosses for you to be able to get a free repost. With this kind of build, it's going to allow you to build that repost and deal that posture damage as much as possible, because again, you have 220 poise damage with this thing. That is not to say that you're not counting as well the base poise damage that this thing has. This basically, anything that you have in front of you, this is going to stagger it. As soon as you have the weapons buff, because again, the 110 damage in poise, it's only for the buff weapon, okay? I forgot to mention that. For you to have that 110 poise damage, the weapon needs to be buff. This increases the poise damage. Not the base weapon was not buffed in poise. Do have in mind as well that they did buff the two-handing weapon, so this also deals more poise damage. So there is that. Like always, if you find the video informative, I would very much like for you to like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. And remember that no one else told you today that you're a gorgeous, beautiful person. You are the gorgeous, beautiful person. Have a beautiful day, and I'll be seeing you goddamn gorgeous and beautiful people in the next one. Goodbye.